In live on Facebook. We are here for you. We are the Estacada School District, and we're here tonight for a very, very big town hall type meeting. And my expectation of you tonight is to be as active as possible in typing in the chat, typing in questions. We're going to kind of forego some of the usual Facebook Live stuff just so we can spend time on this very hot topic of growth and capacity and school configuration. My name is Ryan Carpenter, and I so proudly serve as your school district superintendent. I care deeply about this school district, and we have a major issue that we, the district, and the parents and communities of Estacada need to work through together. So thank you so much for joining. We're gonna have Maggie Kelly, our Director of Communications, who's going to be monitoring the chat. I'm hoping for a lot of questions and answers. Fire away. We really want your initial thoughts, your initial opinions. Just all that I ask is that you keep it respectful. We're trying our best to be front and center. We're extremely vulnerable here on Facebook. So I just ask that your questions are on topic, and we will try our best to answer them to the best of our ability. I'm also joined today by Jennifer Berman, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Jen and her team, as well as a committee of parents, employees, and community members, participated in really the restructuring proposal that we're sharing to you tonight. So I'm going to lay the ground rules out a little bit of our problem, as well as talk a little bit about how we've got to this process and where the decision lies. So first and foremost, as all of you know, Estacada is the #1 fastest growing city in the state of Oregon by percentage population. One of the things I love is I come down from the Springwater, Hayden Road, and I cross the bridge every day with my freshman, my 8th grader, and my 6th grade child going to Estacada schools, and the traffic line is backed up all the way beyond the bridge. I know that you can share some traffic stories as well, but the truth of the matter is Estacada is bustling, and taking kids to and from school is really the biggest congestion that we have inside our community, and that's just evidence of major growth. The growth is a real thing inside our school district as well. We said in our bond campaign last year, which unfortunately was unsuccessful, that we are going to have a growth and capacity issue. Even though we were unsuccessful in the bond, and we understand everybody's perspective in the bond, we know that it was a very hot topic and people were very strong in their opinions. You're 100% fine to have those opinions, and I 100% respect your opinions. But because we were unsuccessful in the bond does not mean people just left or vanished. In fact, more kids are moving in every single day. Just last week, we had 5 more students move into our school district at River Mill Elementary School. And so we're putting a product together that parents want to continue to choose to send their child to, both locally. We're building houses, and our community is thriving in a way that more and more young families are moving out to what we know to be, even though we've all tried to keep it a secret. Estacada is an amazing place with amazing people. And so the problem that we, the Estacada School District, are saddled with is we are over capacity in both of our elementary schools. Next year, we're going to be over capacity in our middle school. And then as you fast forward to the future, we literally have no room to place people. However, Estacada High School is slightly under capacity, and we're going to talk more about that today. But here's what I need you to know. The Estacada community, the citizens who live inside our 750 square mile school district, are responsible for the boundary and configuration of its school. The school district belongs to you. Isn't that a breath of fresh air to know that you have a school district that recognizes that and values that? We're not telling anybody what to do. We're not indoctrinating people in values that don't represent our community. We're literally here today on social media live because we have an issue that we need to solve together. And ultimately, this is your decision. It is not my decision. It is not Jen's decision. It doesn't belong to the teachers or anybody else who works for the Estacada School District, this is a problem that needs to be resolved by the community. And so we're here with you today. Our school board, ultimately the executive board of directors, whom you voted to represent you, to oversee our school district, its operations, its strategic plan, its finances, and then ultimately to supervise its superintendent, your superintendent. The decision lies with them. But what's important tonight is that we can start to collect feedback, collect opinions, and collect your voice so that we can provide that to the executive board of directors as well as ourselves to see what our community really wants to do with growth and capacity. To stay status quo is not a long-term option. In fact, we already have 6 portables on the ground right now serving kids. Each portable, to put the foundation, to electrify it, to put water there, to just set it on the ground, each one costs $300,000. So you do the math, we've already got 6 here, and as growth continues, our school district will go bankrupt, literally, if we keep planting portables on the ground. And so we're trying to find a efficient, cheap, economical, but most importantly, prioritize the experience and the learning experience of each child who walks into our school building. And so I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer Berman here in about 1 minute to allow her to tell the story of how the committee comprised of Estacada citizens came together to begin to tackle this problem. This committee has now provided their recommendations, 2 options, to the Estacada School Board of Directors, and now I'm here tonight in representation of the Executive School Board of Directors to share these options with you to collect your voice and feedback. Again, tonight is all about a big decision that's being made inside our school district. This decision will be made in the month of May. So we have about 28 days for people to sound off, share their voice, and share their opinion of how they want their school district to proceed forward with the growth and capacity. I know one of the frequently asked questions is, just make the growth stop. Well, while wishing might be a case when it comes to that, there is literally nothing the school district can do to prevent growth inside our city and or community. We are obligated by law, plus we just have a moral obligation to serve each and every child who walks inside our door. And so how are we best going to do that? Please comment, please chat. I can't wait so much for our back and forth dialogue. But Jen, let's tell the story of how we got there. Jennifer Berman.
Thank you, Ryan. First of all, I want to say after my board presentation, I want to thank all the people who reached out just to say thank you for my presentation, for our committee, knowing it was a hard job and that it was not an easy thing that we went through to get to that point. So I just appreciate the people taking the time to acknowledge what we went through. So really, I had the honor and privilege of leading the committee that was made up of our community members to address our growth and capacity issue. It was an amazing group of people. We had 24 who signed up. We left that open to anyone who was interested in being a part of it from our community. And around 15 regularly attended. We ended up with 3 different meetings throughout, and in between a lot of time to look at data, have some dialogue, give them an opportunity to reach out to those around them and get some feedback so we could come to our meetings and be really prepared to have good dialogue and conversation around what we needed to solve. And the committee did an amazing job with that. So I want to start with one of the first things we did is look at our current capacity. We looked at where we were at with each building. We looked at what each building was able to handle, where we were at, and also looking at down the road, what do the projections and predictions look like for the numbers as we continue to do the work and look at it. If you notice on the screen, when we look at just all 4 of our buildings combined, we're at about 2,369 students. Well, if you know, our latest enrollment was around 1,900. So while we did have to look at different ways to move students and reconfigure grade levels, at the same time, this is not a long-term solution. We are going to quickly run out of room and probably be back here in the next 2, 3, 4 years if the growth continues to happen the way it has been. So the committee did a wonderful job of looking at what we were provided for data, what our buildings were capable, all of those things, and we ended up starting with 5 different options. The first one was status quo. And with the status quo piece, we looked at where the numbers were, what the capacity was, knowing what growth was going to look like, knowing what portables we already had in place. We quickly realized with the data that to do that would mean we have to look at rebounding, and we would have to look at continuing to add more and more portables, probably to Rivermill, where most of the growth is happening. And in that, we have always done a really good job of saying no matter what elementary school your child goes to, they experience the same education as the other school. That would begin to change. We can't continue to offer as many PE, music, library classes, all those specials to the elementary students at Rivermill if we continue to a status quo. So that in light of the big issue with that current option that we looked at. The other one was just moving the elementary school boundaries. And so it's like, we've done that before. I've been part of a boundary change before. What if we just change the boundaries, knowing that as the growth continues to be mostly on the Rivermill side, that we would probably have to change them in the next couple of years again as that growth continues to happen. What the committee looked at with this one is it doesn't address the middle school overcapacity issue. And so while this was one of our options, it didn't address a whole other big picture where our middle school is going to be maxed out next year, and we'll continue with that as well. Our third one was to reconfigure our elementary schools and go with a K2 option, a 3-5 option, and then again keep our middle school and high school at status quo. That might solve another problem, but doesn't solve the other one of the middle school capacity and what that looks like. So again, we're moving around students while we're still not solving the overall district problem that we needed to solve. Our fourth option was looking at Eagle Creek, another elementary school that could be in our district, but right now the Summit Learning Charter is in that building and utilizing that building as it is. And they also provide us with income that we had to look at as a factor in this option. The amount of money we would lose by not having Summit at Eagle Creek and the amount of money we would have to put into opening up that school, creating a whole new set of office staff, admin, cooks, custodians for another building was going to be a factor when we looked at it. Not to mention, one of the things we're really proud of is the fact that we are a district that is close together. We're able to walk to things. Our kids can experience things within walking distance in all our buildings. And opening up Eagle Creek does shift the way that our district functions. And the committee that was a negative for them in this option. And then our last one was to move to a similar bond proposal. Even though we did not pass the bond, we did have a plan for what we were going to do if we had passed the bond. And we looked at the reasons why we were going to move different grade levels in that option. And we looked at the data and found that as we were going through it, there were definitely some multiple options within this option of different reconfigurations that we could possibly make work while addressing the overall district piece to it. So on our first meeting, where we went through all of the things I just talked about, looked at data, had time to discuss it with some real educated, thoughtful questions and discussions around it. We did a first vote, and we quickly eliminated the status quo option, the Eagle Creek option, and the option to change the elementary school. And I alluded already to some of the reasons why those were looked at as not an option we wanted to continue to pursue, which this left us with the reconfiguration of just the elementary schools or the reconfiguration of all K-12 grade levels in the bond proposed format. So with that, we went to our next meeting, looked again at different ways that we could reconfigure grade levels with numbers, looked at projected numbers. People went to the baseball game, the basketball game, asked people what they thought, brought it back, and we talked through a lot of the pieces that came up in the gap between our meetings. In the end, there was a final consensus that I believe we came to very unanimously, mainly because we all recognize, number one, this is not a long-term solution that is perfect. There is no way we could figure that out in this. But also knowing that we need to make a decision because we cannot continue as we are, and it is very temporary and also can solve the problems we need to do until we look and address the next set of problems that will come our way with growth. So we did have 2 recommending options that we presented to the board. Our first option, which was our number 1 choice, was that Rivermill Elementary becomes a K-2 campus, Clackamas River becomes a 3-4 campus, the middle school becomes a 5-6 campus, and then 7th and 8th grade move to one wing of our high school, and the 9th through 12th graders move to the other side of our high school. Our high school is where the most room for growth was, and there was really no other way to address all of the issues, and it's allowed us to distribute kids a little more evenly, which allows for growth in all the buildings and gives us a chance to buy us some time until we figure out what next steps really are going to look like if this growth continues. We did have a second choice, and that was that Clackamas River and Rivermill become K-4 schools. This would require a boundary change and could require one over and over again, as, like I said, the growth continues to be on the Rivermill side. But also still, because we have to address what's happening at the middle school, that would become a 5-6 campus still, and our 7th and 8th graders would move to one wing of the high school while our high schoolers move to the other wing. Because again, there is no other configuration in our buildings that worked with that number. And while the 7th and 8th grade moving to one wing of our high school is going to be a hot topic, I understand that. And we have some really good options that are going to allow for separate entrances, separate bell schedules, lunches at different times. But I do want to remind you that before this year, our middle schoolers rode the bus with our high schoolers. And currently this year, our middle schoolers are going to the high school for different classes. So at this point in time, and even in the past, there has been some interaction with our middle school and high school kids. So this is nothing new, even though it's a change and it's different. So we're going to do our best to make sure our students are making good choices like we would in any building. We're going to do our best to make sure they have all the supports they need, whatever that looks like, but that will require us to have some different bell schedules and other things that allow a little bit more of a separation between our 7th and 8th graders in our high school.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. And I just really appreciate how important it is that people understand the background of the story. Growth and capacity is an issue. I really like the way that you laid out that there is no perfect option. We understand that everything that we're proposing has pros and cons. There's some things that are great about this recommendation, and there's some things that are going to be some really real challenges for us. And the one that's the most obvious is the merger of our 7th and 8th grade students. We've already received a lot of feedback about anxiety, curiosity about what that looks like. And so, Jen, would you mind just talking a little bit more, just as we start to kind of filter through some questions and comments about how we conceptually are going to try our best to keep them as separate as possible, also knowing full well and understanding that there will be some cross participation among the two. Go ahead.
Yeah, so similar to before our middle school changed their bell schedule this year, our middle school and high school, it'll actually be 7th and 8th grade, not middle school. It'll become a junior high. They will be on the bus with our high schoolers, just like they have been in the past, following all our bus rules, all of those things. But we'll go back to our old bus route of K through 6 on one route, and then our 7th through 8th grade on one route. And with that, we are going to move our office to the front of the building, And then we're going to build out. If you have been in our high school, one side currently has a vestibule in it that you have to be seen on camera to be buzzed in from across the commons. We're going to bring all this together to the front, which I also believe address some safety issues we've been concerned about, and provide another vestibule on the other side, which allows for a 7th and 8th grade entrance and a 9th through 12th grade entrance. There is a window when they walk into the vestibule where they will be able to talk to their secretary, one that is for 7th and 8th grade and one that is for the high school, and they'll be able to build those relationships. Parents can come and talk. You can exchange all the things that office secretaries need to exchange with that personal touch I feel like we've been really good at. Will still continue to happen in separate entrances and separate vestibules. They'll be buzzed into our school in a way that we feel is actually safer probably than what we can currently do in this situation.
Yeah.
So that's a plus. With that, we'll have the bell schedule will be different. So lunches, they won't be at lunch together. They'll be in the gym at different times. They'll be passing at different times. Honestly, it's not that much different than it currently is or was before with our bus situation, and is now with the fact that most of our middle schoolers go over to the high school for a PE class or something else. They're always in our weight rooms. While it sounds a little scarier, there isn't that much difference to what currently or in the past we have done with that combination of grade level students.
One of the things that I also frequently get is, the Commons is such a coveted area, and it's a special place for Estacada High School, and our community, loves deeply the history and tradition of the Commons, and that's typically where high school kids congregate, both at the beginning of school, during lunchtime, and at the end of school. And this is something that we've also taken into consideration. So, if this were approved, when the middle schoolers were to come in their separate entrance, even though they'd be walking through the brick area of the Commons, preferably by closest to the gymnasium, we're actually going to create the library to kind of be that middle school Commons place. So as middle school kids walk in, with adult supervision and support, we would usher them into the library where they would have their own student commons area, their own place, just to be middle schoolers, and to go to start their day and end their day in their own space that's designated to them. I think it's also important just to note that this is not the first time a middle school and high school has merged in the history of Oregon. In fact, the junior, senior high school is more common than you would expect. If you go to Eastern Oregon anywhere, if you go to some of the other small and rural towns and communities, it's actually a pretty common occurrence to merge 7th and 8th graders with high schoolers because of size and building capacity. One of the things I also get is the fear, or I hear from people, is the fear of 7th and 8th graders going into, the Estacada High School, however, in a separate wing. And I just want to point out how important it is to just kind of understand that I guess we talked about how, in other communities it is like that, but it's also important. I can't remember what I was saying with that, so I'll come back to that one as we go through the process. But ultimately, the feedback about, I remember what it was. It was, right now, the Rivermill Elementary School is full of capacity. Clackamas River Elementary School is full in capacity. The middle school is full in capacity. It's Estacada High School that has room for growth. So we have to move something to Estacada High School. If not, the 7th and 8th graders, what do we move there in order to handle all children? I know you and I would both agree kindergartners going over there is a bad idea. And so this is kind of the best option that we have on the table to be able to handle all of the kids inside our school district. We know there's a lot of comments coming in right now, and I'm so appreciative of that. We're going to be spending time to work through that process, but there's one final thing I want to share, because this may be one, I can't see the comments, but there might be one that's coming in frequently, and that is, when will this happen? And I just want to communicate that we want to take a lot of time to make sure that we're logistically planning so that we can execute well the plan that the community puts for us. Again, it's the community who determines what we do. It's the employees and myself, it's our responsibility to execute how we do it. So you determine what we do, we determine how we do it. And that's how we become a team together. The other thing I just want to point out, which I think is important, because sometimes people hit me with this either on social media or behind my back, and that is, our involvement and investment and love for this school district and community. Jen Berman lives in the Estacada School District community, has children at Estacada High School, and has a graduate. I live in the Estacada community, and I have 3 children inside our school district. My youngest daughter, if we make this move, would be someone who goes over to the high school as a 7th grader or 8th grader. And so I just wanted to share that we have a vested interest in what's best for the Estacada School District. We're not just two people who commute from West Lynn every day and just make determinations of what we think we want to do. Like, this affects us too, and we're making decisions that not only are to the best interest of our experience as parents of children in the school district, but also that we care so deeply about the success of the Estacada School District and that Estacada Schools thrives through this process of growth. I don't know if I answered the question, but our plan is to implement some version of this school reconfiguration, not next year, but the year after is when we would execute this. And so when the school board makes their decision in May, that gives us about 15 months, 14 months for us to plan logistically to be able to execute this school reconfiguration. But in the meantime, Estacada Middle School is going to be over capacity. Clackamas River and Rivermill are going to be over capacity, and that's just the truth of what we're working with as we prepare for the future of how we can move some kids to better utilize all the spaces that are available to us. Okay, Maggie. I know that there's been a lot of people participating. We've been asking for that. I just want to clarify that Maggie looks at all of the questions. All of your questions are going to be read or looked at. It is possible that Maggie might take 2 or 3 of a common question and lump it into one to ask one question that hits all themes. So if Maggie asks a question to us that is in the ballpark of what you're asking, please don't accuse us of skipping over your question. We're just trying hard to be efficient so that we can answer some of those things. But your voice matters, your questions matter, and we're here live on social media to answer those questions in front of our community. So Maggie, take it away.
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. And we are hitting record viewership, so thanks so much everyone that is joining us and for all the really thoughtful questions. I also want to say we always prioritize answering questions over responding to comments, but we do read everything, including the comments and opinions, and we pass it along to all of our district leadership, so those are deeply important to us as well. So let's get rolling on the questions. Our first question from RB Munns is, how many out-of-district kids do we have at each school?
That's a great question, and not as many as you would think. We do have some families who have gone through the proper inter-district transfer process where their school district has approved their departure, and we've approved taking them. But I will tell you that that represents 1.5% of the overall student population lives in a different community and comes to the Estacada School District. I also want to point out that while 1.5% is small, inside that 1.5% is also people who were in our school district, and we have a legal obligation to serve them. So let me give you an example. If a student is removed from their home for various reasons from DHS and they go into a foster care system, if the child was attending Estacada schools when they were removed and into foster care, and let's say that that foster care is in Beaverton, which is a real thing, in Sandy, which is a real thing, or Malaga, Guatemala, which is a real thing, we are still legally required to drive to those communities. Gresham is another one where we have a lot of foster care students, and we drive out there to pick them up and bring them in. The same when it comes to special education. We're required to transport these kids to the various places where they're at. And so 1.5% of our overall student population is currently living in an address outside of our school district boundaries, but the majority of that 1.5% are because they're in a foster care system or a different state system, and we're still required to serve them. That's a great question, and I really appreciate you asking it.
Next question is from Nicole, and she asked if we have polled the teachers and school staff, and if so, what percentage of them are in favor of this proposed reconfiguration?
Yeah, not yet is my answer to that question, and we've tried really hard to protect the process. We care deeply about our employees' voice, and by the way, we have so many employees who are also parents and who also live inside our community. So yes, we are asking for their voice as a parent and as a community member, but at the end of the day, this is your school district. It's your responsibility to help shape and form how you want the school district to serve. It's the employees, including myself, it's our responsibility to execute that. You hire us to teach reading, math, science, and social studies, and we are professionals, and we'll do that in any context that's given to us. We have outdated buildings. We have various different problems with all of our school facilities. And while we're asking our community to invest in those facilities, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the roof is leaking in classroom 22, we're going to teach that kid English. And that's our responsibility as the people who are hired by the school board to teach kids at all levels and whoever comes into our door. So we haven't collected the voice of our employees because it's not really their decision to determine how schools are reconfigured. However, as soon as the community makes the decision of what they want their school district to be configured into, then you better believe we're going to be having thousands of conversations with our employees about how to execute the community's wishes. Thank you.
One thing I do think is important to also recognize is that these proposed solutions that we've brought to you have been vetted by educational experts.
Absolutely.
Jennifer Berman, a lot of our school principals looked at these plans, so we have had educators that have looked at these, and we would not bring a proposed solution to you that we thought would harm students academically.
Yeah. And to be fully transparent, we had employees on the committee. We had teachers, we had paraeducators, we had building principals. We also looked at a litany of national research and the pros and cons of different things of the configuration. And so really every aspect has been studied and researched, and ultimately our committee has been briefed on that. And those also did include employees for sure.
Another question we have from RB Munns is how big would the class sizes be at the high school if they give a wing to the junior high school, and how big would the junior high classes be?
That's a great question, and class size is something that we absolutely stay disciplined with and we're committed to. And so first of all, in the current configuration of moving 7th and 8th graders over and keeping our 9th through 12th graders in the high school, we can fit everybody. We have enough classrooms, we have enough space to be able to do that. Now, how we staff our high school and our middle school is unrelated to that reconfiguration, but I will tell you that we staff Estacada Middle School at a 30 student to 1 teacher ratio, and we staff Estacada High School at a 30 student to 1 teacher ratio. That does not include paraeducators, that does not include school counselors, that doesn't include support services. That's just classroom teacher to kid. And so ultimately, we will still continue to have a robust group of employees serving and supporting the whole child and their experience. But that's our current staffing model. We will continue to keep our class sizes at an average level to make sure that our kids have our teachers have relationships with our kids. We keep that small school atmosphere, but at the same time, make sure that we're being efficient with taxpayer money so that we can stay fiscally strong.
A question from Caitlin is, what does this mean for students that are being served by special education?
You want to answer that?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
We will serve them in the same way that we are now, with lots of support, lots of people who care about them, hitting all of their needs, their IEP goals, all of those things in the same way. There would just be a little bit of a difference in the grade configuration, the building that they're possibly in, and where our support staff are. So when we get the go of which direction we're going to be, like Superintendent Carpenter said, we then as internal staff will look at our numbers, we will look at our staff, we will look at our IEPs, our 504s, and determine who can serve our students and continue to serve our students in the best way possible, making sure we're meeting all of their needs. So in my mind, it will not change. In fact, us having buildings that are a little bit more specific to a smaller grade level range allows us to actually bring specific resources in and be almost more intentional with a building that can serve all our kindergarten students with specialists who specialize in kindergarten, and allow us to really look at the specific milestones of age ranges and really target that in a more resourceful way than we can with two buildings that have a very big span of grade levels. So we will not leave anyone out, and we will make sure our inclusive model continues in the best way possible and continue to support our students in the best way possible.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things actually about this. I would say this as a pro is just how neat it is to think that we have a building that is just kindergarten through second grade or just third grade through fourth grade. I mean, you think about the resources that we can efficiently consolidate to serve and support just that age group of children actually is quite exciting to me. Not to mention the fact that, at Rivermill Elementary School right now, we have 3 or 4 kindergarten teachers. At Clackamas River, we have 3 kindergarten teachers. Like, how cool will it be to have a building where all 7 kindergarten teachers are there together, sharing information, sharing best practice teaching strategies, being able to make adjustments as a whole team together in one building. In addition to that, having all of the I'll use a different example, having all of the 4th grade teachers in one specific building. As growth continues to come, we can spread that growth out to make sure that our class sizes are being honored. One of the problems that we're having right now is our 5th graders, our 5th grade class, which is an enormous class, 180 kids, which is the largest class inside our school district. But we started staffing the 5th grade group at a 25-to-1 teacher to student ratio. Well, over the course of the school year, more kids have been moving in, and those classes sizes are now closer to 29 or closer to 30, and there's nowhere to spread them out because there are only 3 5th grade teachers. Our ability to have 6 5th grade teachers allows that growth to be able to be spread out evenly so that class sizes continue to stay under control. So I appreciate that question, and I would say that this reconfiguration actually is a strength for how we serve and support students with special education and just all students at specific grade levels.
Our next question from Rachel is, if this is approved by the board, will 5th and 6th grade be ran like an elementary with a classroom teacher and specials, or will they be switching classes each period? And we're going to turn that one over to Jen because I know her committee talked about that quite a bit.
We did. This part actually excites me too with this potential change in opportunity. So currently, our kindergarten through 5th grade students are in self-contained classrooms, so our 5th graders have 1 classroom teacher. Then they transition to 6th grade at the middle school and have 7 classroom teachers, and that's a big jump. And we have seen with data, it's a struggle. We've done a lot of work around our transitions. We've done a lot of work with our success teams to help with that transition. Having a 5-6 campus actually allows us to do a better job of transitioning. So one of the things that we have talked about, and again, this is more of the how, the internal piece that's very much the detail piece, but I know you're thinking about it. And we can't get there until we deal with the what it's going to look like. But if we get to a 5-6 building, we do have the opportunity to create a transition master schedule that would allow for, instead of having 1 classroom teacher, they may have 4 classroom teachers where their math and science teachers and their social studies and language arts teacher is the ones that they walk to, and they learn how to go class to class and how to have different expectations for different content areas as they move around the building in their day. And then they would be a little bit more prepared to go to 7 classes from the 4. So there's a really great opportunity to take advantage of this 5th and 6th grade option where we can create a really good transition plan that sets them up for success. And once they have that 7 class period dialed in 7th and 8th grade, they're going to be a huge success with our 9th grade transition to high school and be ready to go and meet all of the things that they need to do to be good high school students and graduates.
Great, absolutely.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions and comments on a similar topic, and it's concerns around congestion and the logistics of picking kids up from multiple different elementary schools if you have kids at different age levels.
Yeah, great question. And major problem in our current configuration, no doubt about it. We'll start with our buses. One of the challenges of our buses right now is we have some kids who live in the Clackamas River side going to River Mill. We have some kids living in the River Mill side going to Clackamas River. And so with the 2 elementary school configurations right now, we run a transfer bus. And so, we have one group of buses that picks up kids at Clackamas River and then heads to the Clackamas River boundary. We have a group of buses that picks kids up at River Mill and then heads out to drop kids off at the River Mill boundary. And so ultimately that transfer bus is kind of what moves kids who live in different boundaries into the proper bus location so that they can get dropped off home safely. The problem with our transfer bus is the kids at River Mill Elementary School who take the transfer bus, they have to miss 5 minutes of class each and every single day. So do the math, they're missing hundreds of minutes over the course of a school year just so they can get on the transfer bus to come to go to the other school so they can get on their bus and go home safely. In this reconfiguration, it eliminates all of that because every kid is at their spot and we've got the buses to be able to take kids all over the place. Another problem with our current configuration is that we also release the middle school at the same time as our elementary school. And by the way, I wholeheartedly believe in that. And our data right now is showing that that move, although cumbersome and problematic in different ways, is actually having great results from an academic perspective. And that's why we did it, is for academic purposes. Nonetheless, so now we're picking up elementary and middle school at the same time. And that's where you get a lot of traffic congestion, is because we're moving our buses, and by the way, a very organized process, but that is definitely something that backs up our parents and our schools. The cool thing is if we do this version of the configuration, you will actually see, in my opinion, less congestion because our elementary schools will all be going home at the exact same time, and the way that we can process our buses will be different than what it currently is today. And I just want to be clear, it's the yellow buses that are backing things up. It's the yellow buses that are in the way of parent cars and parent pickup and all of that kind of stuff. And in our current configuration, we only have 550 high school students, and our buses are only picking up the high school in the second part of that run. And so I believe moving 7th and 8th grade to the high school and releasing them at the same time will actually allow our buses to come into the high school parking lot proper, leaving the roads open for cars and congestion, and also allowing us to do a different configuration of parent pickup when it comes to high school. And so congestion is a real concern. It's a real problem. And I actually believe that this configuration will make congestion just a little bit better. However, we're a growing community with small streets. Congestion is just going to continue to be a problem as our community continues to grow.
Can I add another piece to that that's come up a few times, and that's if I have students in multiple buildings and go to pick them up, how am I going to do that all at the same time? Good news is, while it's a very similar stop and start time, we still have to stagger them about 10, 15 minutes in order for buses to have time to pick each one of the buildings up. So you will be able to get from one building to the next in a time period that your child won't be left behind or alone. We will make sure they are safe until you're able to get there. But right now I have seen families who have children in multiple buildings that have that 10 to 15 minute gap, and they're able to pull it off. So we believe you'll be able to hit all of the buildings if you have students in multiple buildings.
Yep.
Our next question from Marissa is, how does this breakdown of age separation, has it been studied? Is there evidence supporting this decision, and can we share that?
Yeah, thank you, Marissa, for that question. And there is a lot of evidence, and there's a lot of case studies around the merger of 7th and 8th grade with high school. And like I said before, it's actually quite common in rural school districts as well as in Eastern Oregon school districts. And while we're not as rural as some of the school districts in Eastern Oregon who have been executing this for years, one of the things that's neat is we really do have a small school community and small school feel. The 7th and 8th grade students who have siblings at the high school level, they've been interacting their entire life and just the same in different circumstances. But at the end of the day, the correlation between 7th and 8th grade kids being in the same building, not necessarily together, just being in the same building, has actually had no effect on overall student outcomes and or student experience. And we've been working with many different school districts who have this model. In fact, Jen was just talking to a school district from Mississippi not 2 weeks ago to learn more about their school configuration. So not only are we studying this locally or in the state, allergies, or in the states, but we're also, studying this from a national perspective as well.
Another question from Rachel is, how much work is needed in the wing that's going to serve 7th and 8th grade students? And could you just talk a little bit about the condition of the high school and how it's going to be able to serve those additional students?
Yeah, well, first of all, we will be able to do it in a safe manner. Obviously the high school is built in 1965. Minimal upgrades have been done other than just the nuanced things that break that we use our general fund dollars to fix and repair. Like, for example, water leaks, electrical outlets that blow up, things of that nature that we keep chipping away with. But there will need to be some construction that occurs in order to execute our vision. One of the things that's been a priority to us in the last 3 failed bond campaigns is moving the high school office to the front of the school. If you've been in Estacada High School, you'll know that you've got to walk through the commons to get to the main administrative offices. I have never liked that from a safety perspective, but it's also just a scary situation for a parent or a guest or visitor to have to walk through a sea of students that you're unfamiliar with to get to our administrative offices. So for us to execute and actualize 2 separate entrances, one for the high school and one for the middle school, we're going to need to move that office area to the front so that middle school secretaries and middle school office staff will be able to build relationships with families, build relationships with middle school kids, while on the other side of that office, high school office staff will be able to do just the same. And so based on whatever the school board decides in May, we will probably start working this summer to start chipping away at some of the bigger things in order to support this movement and growth. But I need to be clear about this. It's not like we have a coffer of millions of dollars to execute this. This is what we were asking the community for last fall. And so we have about $800,000 in our capital construction fund. And so we're going to need to make all of this happen inside that. And so we're going to need to tap into our local community, to volunteers, to private donors, to help us execute this vision in the way that we'd all like to see it go successfully. We're also going to need to do some high school library work, but the classrooms themselves are good. They're full of technology, they're big spaces, we have the desks, we have the spaces, and so when it comes to the actual grinding of teaching and learning and doing the hard work that's most important, I actually feel good. We could start tomorrow, give or take some people moving, but we could start tomorrow to teach kids, but to create that culture, to create that community, to allow Estacada Middle School to have their own place to call home that is separate from Estacada High School will take a little bit of construction work.
I'm going to consolidate a couple more questions. We've had it from Taylor, Dorian, and Janae. They want to know, what's the plan for after-school programs, childcare, etc.?
So not much changes except for the fact that the the 7th and 8th grade, probably more junior high now, will have the bell schedule that meets the bus ending times with the high school. So that extends their day a little bit from what it currently is. But outside of that, sports are still going to continue. Our after-school programs will still continue. We may have to adjust times based on the grade level they're serving. But other than that, we plan to still provide the best during school and after school and before school programs that we are currently offering in our current status.
Yep.
A question from Nikki: would sending the 7th and 8th grade students over to the high school expand their opportunities for more curriculum and more class choices?
Yeah. Hi, Nikki, and thank you for asking that question. And I believe the answer to that is ultimately yes. It does get them in a closer proximity to some of our career technical education classes. And in an upcoming Facebook Live, I'm excited to roll out to our community the overhaul that we're about to make in those programs as well. We have a great music program at Estacada Middle School. That music teacher would also come over to the high school. We have 2 big, beautiful rooms to serve what I think is one of the best music programs in the state of Oregon. And so your child's ability to be exposed to more musical opportunities and art opportunities is a realistic possibility. Our ability to consolidate some of the resources to expose kids to more opportunities is actually going to be better, including more gym space and more opportunities when it comes to that as well. The middle school only has 1 gym. Estacada High School has 2. There's a lot of middle school students coming over to Estacada High School every period of every day just to utilize that gym space. And so I think that's another example of things that will be separate. We'll have high schoolers in 1 gym doing PE. We'll have middle schoolers in another gym doing PE, and it will be a separate experience as well.
Another question from Nicole: if we need to hire a new layer of administration for the 7th and 8th grade group, can we instead just afford to have more specials teachers to have a rezoned River Mill and make it equitable and giving them adequate PE and music time instead of spending that money on admin?
Okay. Let me make sure I got the question right before I try to answer this. But basically, currently our plan is if we move 7th and 8th grade, we will probably add a vice principal at this point to cover that, while our current high school principal will still oversee the entirety of the building. We'll be adding a vice principal to help support behavior and teachers on that wing of the high school. To reallocate the money, correct me if I'm wrong, to River Mill to help with more PE music, was that the question?
Yes, because that's been one of our concerns with the overcrowding of River Mill is reducing the specials time.
Yeah, and that's not about us spending the money on a teacher. It's about space. We only have 1 gym at River Mill. We only have a music room at River Mill as well, and those teachers can only fit so many classes into a day and into a space. We will, even next year, probably have to utilize some of CRE's FTE possibly, or look at some other gym space to share just to get through next year, which is going to be even less than the following year. So with that being said, there might be some creative ways that we could do it, but it's a very short-term fix. And right now, those music and PE teachers have a very packed schedule, and we can't just continue to pack more. And even if we hired more teachers, there's not enough space to pull off more classes, if that makes sense.
I also think it's important to point out that as we move 7th and 8th grade to the high school, many of the staff at Estacada Middle School will come over as well. And so you will, by default, see an influx of specialists, support staff, counseling, as well as just the teachers who come with it. And so it will be a busy building for sure.
Another question from Marissa, and I want to rewind back to give a little context to her question. She asks, when comparing to Eastern Oregon, because early Superintendent Carpenter, you mentioned
Yep.
that 7th and 8th is similar to Eastern Oregon.
Yep.
She said, are they expecting the same growth that Estacada is, though?
No, they are not. In fact, rural Oregon is really reducing in population just in general. But again, we're not doing this necessarily because of the ruralness of Eastern Oregon. We're doing it specifically because of space. And so our why of moving these kids into Estacada High School is different than Eastern Oregon. I'm just sharing with you that we have seen a lot of data that it's a successful model when it happens. But where rural Eastern Oregon is in terms of their status versus where we are in our status are two completely different things and two different motivations of why we're doing it. We're moving the 7th and 8th graders to the high school because that's the only place where there's extra room. If we had a bigger building or a new building, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But right now, the Estacada High School can hold about 1,000 kids. It's half occupied. And so, and the middle school is over capacity, and both elementary schools are over capacity. So this is our best option with the buildings that we have. But we know that there's a 7th and 8th grade and 9th through 12th grade model that is very common in Eastern Oregon that we think is a workable model to continue to prioritize learning and student culture. Thank you for that question, Marissa. I appreciate your thoughtfulness in this.
Another question from Janae. I know you've answered this, but I think it's important to just remind folks again as we get a little anxious about this big change. Janae wants to know, would this start next school year?
No, it's not. And thank you. We need to continue to answer that question as it comes up. And again, half of the reason why we're here too is so that you've heard the information and that we can count on you to share that information with other people as well. We need more help in exposing this decision and our circumstances to everyone throughout the community. So to answer your question, Janae, this will not happen next year, no matter what the school board decides. It could be a version of this or something completely different. It's literally in your hands how we support growth and capacity. We will do it for I believe it's the 26-27 school year is when we execute it. So our community, our employees, and just the school district at large will have about 15 months to plan on how to execute this. Thank you.
A question from Amanda. If new boundaries are created, how do you keep people honest about their home addresses? Does the district have the bandwidth to even check into this?
Yeah, that's the problem with option number 2 is if we were to continue to have 2 different elementary schools and we redrew the boundaries, we know that dishonesty happens all the time and we start claiming grandmothers' addresses, uncles' addresses, just so kids can go to the neighborhood school that they historically have gone to. The other problem is we're growing so much and the neighborhoods continue to expand that even if we redrew a boundary tomorrow to execute next year, like a year from now, we'd be coming back to you because the growth is there and we have to redraw the boundaries again, trying to keep both elementary schools even. And that's just not a realistic solution. And so one of the pros, because I know how historical this community is, and I know how important these neighborhood schools are to different families. I've spoken to dozens of people who are so proud to say that 3 or 4 generations have gone to River Mill Elementary School or have gone to Estacada Grade School before it became Clackamas River Elementary School. And we understand that and we honor that. And so part of our intention to create this K2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 through 12 buildings is that every kid still gets the opportunity to go through their historical school that means so much to his family. The other thing that I think is important that we haven't talked about is if we move in this direction, we'd also like to turn every school into being a ranger. And so the mascots would be everybody is a ranger. And I really think that it will promote more community, more pride, more historical knowledge of Estacada and its wonderful school district over the course of time. And so there are some upsides inside of that. You know, if there's a million kids playing youth sports and athletics throughout the course of the year. And one of the things that's always interesting to me is, you know, they go to Clackamas River and they're a Chinook. They go to Estacada Middle School and they're a Tiger. And by the way, they're orange and black, which is like the same colors as Malala and Gladstone. Gladstone, our two most hated rivals, which I have a problem with. But at the same time, and then they come together as one group in youth sports or youth activities, and they're all wearing green, they're all wearing Rangers. And so there's some opportunity for us to actually build unity inside this move that actually excites me quite greatly.
Another question or concern from Nicole was, are we concerned that we are going to lose some teachers or paras due to this change? And one thing I wanted to comment on is we work in education, so we keep ahead of the education headlines, and there are many districts right now that are closing and consolidating elementary schools because they're experiencing population loss. So changing reconfigurations of schools is very common in every district. We are fortunate enough that our district is thriving, but every district changes configurations at some point. But I want to turn it over to Superintendent Carpenter.
Well, I would say yes is the answer to that question. Regardless of circumstance, we're always worried about losing our talented, great teachers. And our school district works very hard in intentional strategies to re-recruit and retain the people that we know are making a difference in this organization. Reconfiguration or not, that's something that's always on my mind, and we care deeply about our employees who invest their life and their personal career into our school district, raising and supporting and educating the children of Estacada. So absolutely, that's a top priority when it comes to that. And as Maggie alluded to, just this time of moving to a different school district is actually very difficult. We're growing in population, we're doing great financially, and because of that, we have the opportunity to add more faculty to support our children. Most school districts right now are experiencing that population decline or having financial difficulties, and so they're laying off. And so one of the cool things, if you'll call it that, is some of the openings that we have had because of teacher departure for various reasons, is our application pool is probably the strongest that I've ever seen. The talent and the volume of talent of people applying for an open 4th grade spot or an open 2nd grade spot, or even in our principal at Clackamas River spot, is really quite impressive. So I think that this configuration, along with our 4-day week, the May break, makes us a very attractive school district. And I think a lot of people would love to be in a building where only kindergartners and 2nd graders are. That sounds magical to me. It also sounds magical to have a 5th and 6th grade building developing on transitions and those things. So there's pros and cons to it, but to answer your question, I'm always deeply concerned about making sure that our best folks stay here and continue to invest their careers in Estacada schools. Absolutely.
Thank you. Question from Justina, and I'm not sure what this is referencing, but I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Carpenter, and we're going to do our best with it, if it was a certain way in the past, what was the reason for change? And if we are able to compare current community to what was done in the past, so many concerns have changed over the years just because it's a common practice in Oregon, or something that has been done in the past doesn't remove those concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to just first state by saying that education, at least in my experience, I've been in this business now for 17 years, 7 as a superintendent, is public education moves in cycles. And maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about from your own experience as a student. There's times in waves where block scheduling is really popular, and there's times where the 7-period day is popular. There's times when these strategies are popular, and there's times when other strategies are popular. And so a lot of the change and evolution that occurs in public education actually goes in cycles. It was actually quite popular, I would say, in the 1980s to actually have this model that we're proposing going to, where you had these small communities of schools. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the early 2000s really tried to create a small school atmosphere. I went to Centennial Middle School, which had about 600 or 700 kids at Centennial Middle School, but our school was broken into teams. Maybe that was your experience as well. I was on the green team as a 7th grader and a blue team as an 8th grader, and that was try to create these little small pods of student experience where you got to know your teachers. And so public education is always going to move, and that's something that we just continue to work through as the waves come. The one thing that I'm proud about the Estacada School District is we try our best to stay grounded in our community's mission, vision, and values. We use data to make real-time decisions so that we can pivot our organization to better support things and to look at the things that aren't working and abandon those things so we can make adjustments towards that. And so, again, we're proposing something, like Jen said at the beginning, that's really a temporary fix for a bigger problem, and that's growth and capacity. So don't be surprised in 2 years, 3 years, 8 years from now we say we have to change again. That's because just the times, the data, and the situations are going to require us to do so. And I'm not afraid to come to you as well as to come to our expert educators to say, here's the problem. Now we need to create a solution to work in that direction. But Estacada has had a great tradition. The middle school used to be the high school. At one point, Estacada Union High School was a 7 through 12 high school as it was growing. The Eagle Creek community was thriving at one point. The old schoolhouse out in Eagle Creek, which people tell me about all the time, like, don't knock that thing down. My great-great-granddaddy went to that school, and it's a very important thing. And so it will always be changing, and we love our history, but we've got to make the best decision right now for today. And this is what we're recommending to our community. And it's ultimately your call. I hope I answered that question. It was a great question.
I think so. A question from Kendall. Would the movement of 5th and 6th graders mean that the middle school lockers stay in place? And do we need to put a playground in?
Great question.
That's a good question. And again, those are some of the hows and the details that maybe haven't been completely figured out, which is why we've given ourselves over a year and a half to figure those things out. We would let the experts of that age range determine if we need lockers still, or if we need to add a playground, or if we need to support the 5th and 6th grade in a different way. It's a great opportunity for us to come together and figure out those details once we know how the configuration will be approved.
Yeah. We're an hour into this, and I appreciate everybody who's hanging in there. I'd like to go for 10 or 15 minutes if the questions and comments allow. Again, we want to be here to answer questions and to support any concerns and or opinions that you may be formulating through these processes. You have a right to form an opinion here and to communicate that opinion. Our responsibility is just to make sure you have all the information possible to make the best opinion, and ultimately for our school board of directors to make the best decision that we possibly can. Maggie, let's keep it going.
Yeah, and I do also want to say, if we don't get to your question or your comment, we have a page on our website that is dedicated to this exact topic, estacadaschools.org/growth. We have an FAQ, frequently asked questions section, and we're going to be putting some of these questions in there and continuing to expand that. So that's a good resource to look at as well. Yeah. A question from Cindy: was the movement of preschools and daycares considered in this decision?
It was, is the answer to that question. However, there's also just some things changing with our preschools and daycares as well. We work closely with Tiny Timbers and 3 or 4 other local small businesses who run daycares, and we have worked with Tiny Timbers a little bit, and they're growing themselves and choosing to purchase new buildings and try to expand their services as well. I do want to point out, and then I'll let Jen add on to this, but it's important to remember that a lot of the daycares is not affiliated with the Estacada School District. While some of them rent our space for money, we charge money to rent public taxpayer facilities, they're not actually connected to the Estacada School District. We just try to open our spaces to solve or serve a demand coming from our parents. But pre-K is a different conversation, and some of that does belong to us. And so, Jen, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this was definitely a hot topic in the committee meetings as well. In fact, we had some of the leaders of those businesses represented in our community committee, which was great. With that, part of the reason why we didn't go with the status quo option is that we would end up having to kick all of those programs out of our buildings because we would need them to be classrooms. Yep. And with us moving and reconfiguring, it allows each building to have room for more growth, so we can utilize classrooms for other things that support our community as well, before and after school care and our preschool programs. So this actually allowed us to continue those services, where if we stayed status quo, we would probably not add more portables to keep a daycare or a preschool program. They would have to go find a different location. So this was talked about thoroughly, and the committee felt like this reconfiguration actually supported continuing those programs in the best way.
Thank you.
A question from Marissa. Will buses start to transport kids who live closer to the schools?
No is the answer to that question, and there's a law that obligates that any elementary school student who lives within a 1 mile radius of their elementary school is required to walk. Students who are middle school or high school students, the law states that if you live 1.5 miles away from your school, requires you to walk. And so that's something that I would say, our school district did have a history of, kind of dropping kids off on the way home. But because our buses are also full of capacity, we just no longer have the space or ability to do that because our buses are full of kids who live a mile away or 1.5 miles away. And so at this point, subject to change, but at this point we plan to remain consistent with that 1 mile radius of requiring walkers, which is a very common thing in schools, and 1.5 miles for secondary students. Thank you.
This one is a comment, but I think it's an important one to address as we talk about the intention of really this Facebook Live session and this public input period. Taylor said that she feels like we're being sold this plan, but not hearing how it is actually going to affect them. And I want to say that we absolutely know that this might not be the best case option for everyone. We were presented with a problem of capacity, and so we got a committee together to get into problem-solving mode, and change is hard, and there are going to be some families and students that really benefit from this and some that struggle. And we are just here to collect your input and to problem solve together as a community about something that is a very tough, real issue that we don't have a perfect solution to at this point. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Carpenter.
Thank you. And if your feelings that we're selling this, that's not our intention, and I apologize for that. By no means am I trying to convince anybody of anything here. At the end of the day, there was probably 6 or 7 options that were on the table that was presented to this committee, who is a representative of all corners of our school district boundary and population. They recommended to the school board in the April school board meeting 2 options. So really my intent here is to communicate those options to you, but at the end of the day, something has to be done. Otherwise, we're going to be educating kids at the base of trees because we don't have space for them. So we have to do something. I thought the committee did a phenomenal job of really working through the 6 or 7 different options. They presented those 2 options to the school board. So the school board will be making a decision on one of the 2 options that was presented earlier in this Facebook Live. And so really what Jen and I are here today is just to communicate those options and the pros and cons of those options and answer questions that people might have about the options. And so we're here to share that. So it's not our intention to sell anything. We're just trying our best to communicate the problem and the solution that is at the board's table right now in order to contemplate and make a decision. And your role inside of this is to share your opinions and to share your feedback so that we can collect all of these things, because if we need to make an adjustment, right now is the time for that adjustment, and this is why we're here tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. A question from Justina. She wants to know about the potential drawback of not having other ages and grades around for the development of some of our younger students.
You want to take that one?
That's an interesting question. I would say in our research, there was no real research that said it's better to have more grade levels in a building, or any research that said it's worse. If you look across the country and all the different districts, there's so many different combinations. We were really intentional looking at our data and looking at how we support students and thinking about how, The block of kindergarten to second grade is a real emphasis on early literacy right now and making sure those students have the foundational skills they need. So that seemed like a real common sense breaking point to then go into third and fourth, where you're moving into state testing and you're looking at more of the comprehension part of literacy, where you're really reading to learn content and that shift that happens. And then really our fifth and sixth grade are just a continuation of that as we start to transition them to get ready for middle school and high school. And so we looked at it based on how we support our kids, what the data tells us on where their needs are and where their growth is, along with all the different options that you could do. And again, we're in a situation that is not perfect because we also had to just look at numbers. And we had to look at what building can hold how many kids and what grade configuration can fit that many kids in it.
Yep.
We would love to not be having this conversation because we were able to do what we needed to do to make our buildings fit all the growth, but we didn't get to that point. And so now we have to look at the very bottom line of how much can that building hold, how many kids can we put in there, and the prediction of what our growth is going to be. And then while we do that, looking at what's best for our kids and what the data is telling us to support them academically, social, emotionally, and with those relationships.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to hear a cool stat? I think the listeners, I think you will appreciate this stat. The average elementary school size in the United States of America is right around 300 students. Rivermill Elementary School right now has 510. Clackamas River Elementary School has 490. And so just to really support what Jen is trying to communicate, our ability to break the grades up like this based on our own school population, this movement will actually get all schools closer to that 300 average model. And so I think there's a win inside of that as well. But 510 kids at Rivermill is about 40 kids less than Estacada High School right now. Like, it's booming.
That's a lot.
And we've got to try to find a way to regulate that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A question from Dorian, and I believe Susan as well. With this change, will we go back to a 5-day school week?
No, that's not our plan. We're going to continue status quo. We actually surveyed our parents I want to say 6 to 8 months ago, and it is the 4-day school week is overwhelmingly supported by our community and by our parents. We have grown the highest when it comes to graduation rates. Our test scores are growing exponentially right now. There's a lot of good things happening under this move from a student learning data perspective. And someone had asked the question earlier about the retention of our employees, and this has also made us an attractive destination school district to attract some of the most talented teachers from the Portland metro area. So the board approved late last spring, a 3-year commitment to this 4-year calendar. So we are obligated through policy and through school board authorization to continue this current calendar model for the next 3 years, counting this one.
A question from Amanda. Would the middle school get their library back since it would house 5th graders who typically get that class?
So our middle school currently has a library, and it is open during lunchtime where kids can go in, they can check out books. So that is in full operation, and that will continue to be that way as we move kids into this new configuration. But our goal is to have active libraries in every single one of our buildings to support our students and provide a space for them to study and learn.
Yeah. But fun fact, something we were talking about just over the last couple of weeks, Estacada Middle School will be so full next year that we actually have to put some temporary walls up to create an additional classroom inside the middle school library space. And so there will be some impacts just because of growth in next year's middle school.
Yeah, that's part of why the status quo option doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because if we have to start using our library as classrooms, even to get through next year, we can't continue that model and still give our students all the opportunities they have with all the resources that they need, where the reconfiguration will allow us to have that wiggle room back.
Yeah. Thanks for your advocacy for libraries, though. Thank you.
A question from Tim. Is there a reason that we don't use Eagle Creek Elementary if it seems that our capacity is the problem, then shouldn't we be putting that money towards expanding our infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it comes up all of the time. And so just a quick background. So Eagle Creek Elementary School right now is fully utilized and already at full capacity. This is where we offer our very robust and highly successful charter school. Parent choice is something that's a very trendy thing. We talked about educational trends, and not everyone agrees with public education and the things that public education represents. In some case, I agree also with some of those fears and concerns. But at the same time, Eagle Creek is fully utilized by 1,300 students from around the Estacada and Portland metro area, and they come out to that campus on Tuesdays and Thursdays to get their learning from that spot. The teachers of Summit Learning Charter inhabit that building 5 days a week, and they've done a great job taking care of Eagle Creek Elementary School as well. They've been a great partner, and because of that, we're able to really utilize some different options and assets, as well as financially we benefit from that partnership as well. The other problem about if we were to kick the charter school out of there, that would be problematic for us because we're capitalizing as well as capturing a lot of parents who don't send their kids to the Estacada School District. They want to homeschool, or they want to co-op with different religious parents and families and that piece of it. And so by allowing Eagle Creek to be an open and thriving charter school allows us to continue to educate local Estacada children, and it's something that we're very proud of. The second problem with opening up Eagle Creek is the growth and the boundary isn't necessarily at Eagle Creek yet. And so one of the problems is when we talk about reboundarying, everybody seems to be supportive of exploring opening up Eagle Creek until they find out that that's where their kid is going. And that's typically when we get into the lying of boundaries and the lying of addresses and those types of things. I mean, if you think about it, where the growth is right now is just off of the River Mill School District proper, those neighborhoods in there, the one that's going in across from the Grace Christian Crossing Church, that's 400 homes. There's 200 more homes going in at the intersection of River Mill Road and the old Eagle Creek Highway. Like, those are people that should technically, if this was a traditional school district, they should go to River Mill. That's where it's at. It's literally less than 1 mile. They should walk to River Mill Elementary School. And so the problem with opening up Eagle Creek is we'd be displacing kids who's literally physically next door to River Mill Elementary School and busing them out to Eagle Creek. And so from a logistical perspective, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I'm not saying never to Eagle Creek, because at some point it just might be something that we have to explore. But right now, we have the community support to try to protect our campus atmosphere and kids, inside the Estacada city limits proper. Again, Eagle Creek is fully utilized, and I encourage you to drive by it. I mean, when you drive by there on Tuesday and Thursday, it's humming, full of parents, kids, and it is full of cars.
Another question, and I know we're approaching 8:30, so we're going to wrap up soon, but I do want to get to questions while we still have the time. Another question is a fun one. Will the sports challenge be taken over by the 5-6 building?
Ooh, that's another traditional important thing. I'm going to say no. Jen?
If I was going to predict, there might be a new tradition that gets started, but we'll see. Those are things that will come after some bigger decisions that really impact our students.
We do value the traditions of our school district, and we do want to continue to keep the things that are important to our families, important to the heritage of kids who have come through that process. So while that decision is not something we can truly say yes or no to, because we're just so at a higher level of this determination, but those will absolutely be factors that our community will get to participate in once we determine what it is we're going to do.
A question from Missy is, what about air conditioning and heating? Our kids are suffering in these conditions.
Amen. Thank you, Missy, for that comment. And yes, that is the truth, especially on a 78-degree day or whatever it was that happened today. We're trying to chip away at air conditioning inside our own pocket. We just spent $300,000 of general fund money to air condition one pod inside Clackamas River Elementary School. We're working on chipping away at that, but to air condition the entire district is a multi-million-dollar project that we're just going to need community help in to be able to accomplish that. I mean, I promise, here's my promise to you, within the next 20 years, we'll probably be able to chip away at air conditioning at each spot. But in order for that to happen in an efficient process, we're going to need more community help. But I'm with you. There's actually data that correlates to, for every 1 degree that drops inside a classroom, correlates to 1 point earned on state testing. So we're already kicking butt in state testing, and we're growing in state testing as well. But could you imagine if our classrooms were an awesome 71 degrees, what those scores would be? Thank you, Missy, for that great question.
Another question from Nicole. Do you have some estimated numbers or hard numbers on the cost for these upgrades and changes that we're going to put into place? She said she knows that portables are expensive at $300,000 each, but what is this proposed change going to cost us?
Yeah, great question. And I don't have any hard numbers yet. I've kind of patiently just kind of held back to get any hard costs until we make a decision and move forward. I can tell you that we have had one local community member who, just out of the goodness of his heart, runs a major conglomerate construction company that's one of the biggest construction firms, really in Oregon, if not the Northwest. And he came through and just kind of looked at all of the stuff that we thought we needed to change. And again, we could spend tens of millions of dollars to do this, which we just don't have. And so we are going to try to just do things on a shoestring budget. It's not going to look awesome. It's not going to look new, but it is going to accomplish the things we need to effectively, safely run each day of school. But your point is taken. $300,000 for a portable. We'll probably spend close to $300,000 to, upgrade the high school office and move it to the front. And so I do hear what you're saying there. And those are some of the tough decisions that we're just trying to weigh as we try to handle this growth in capacity. But at the same time, make sure kids don't learn inside a portable. It's just not it's not a statistically great thing for kids to be in. Parents and kids feel disenfranchised from their school community when they're out there learning in a portable. And just between us, the people watching, I also have safety concerns of kids in a portable. We do a lot of work to make sure that our building is secure, protected, all of the above. It's just more vulnerable when kids are in just kind of those ancillary annex type spots. And so I don't love that either. And so I would much rather spend and invest money on the internal part of our facilities so that we can continue to keep kids safe and make them feel like they're a part of the school community, for the teachers as well.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions, one from Janae and one from Anna. They want to know, if a bond is passed, will we keep this configuration? Will we do something different? And when is the next bond going to be?
Great question. I have no answer or timetable on the bond. We're still kind of trying to figure things out from the last campaign and try to hit that sweet spot of something that we think that the community could rally and get behind. It was abundantly clear that, as we worked through the bond committee, as I made my way around many different meetings, community groups, gatherings, all of the above, that the rebuilding of the high school is by far the most popular thing that gets the most amount of support inside our community. But the problem with a new high school is the price tag of a new high school, and that's where the conversation ends with a lot of our community, particularly not ones who are affiliated with our school district. A new high school is very popular amongst our parents. It is very unpopular amongst people who do not have kids inside our school district because of the price tag. And so that's one that I'd like to continue to revisit. But yes, if we were to go out for a new bond, this would be the conversation that we would start with is what do we need to make a long-term configuration for our schools? Is that a new elementary school in the middle of one of the brand new neighborhoods? That's a possibility. Is it building a two-story high school and having the middle school in the wing next to it, which was what our current bond proposal was to do. And so that's a community decision. It's always been a community decision. It's just my responsibility to try to promote the bonds in hopes that we'll get community support, and we've been unsuccessful in that so far. I will tell you, though, this conversation has led to more emails from our parents to me in my email inbox about the motivation to go out for another bond. And again, I serve at the pleasure of our community, and if our community wants to try again to get our taxpayers to invest in its school system, I'm always game for that. That's my role and responsibility. But I'll tell you, the last one was a tough one for us to swallow, and we do need to get back on the horse in the next couple of years for sure.
Our last question, then it looks like questions are slowing down. So our last question from Rachel, looking at the data, how long will this Band-Aid be effective? And if we look at our growth projections that we had done by a group that does population studies, they estimate by the end of the year 2029, all of our buildings, no matter how you configure them, will start to become over capacity.
Yeah, I believe that this configuration will give us about 3 or 4 years of breathing room, but then after that, we're in real trouble. How about that? Yep.
Well, it looks like that is the majority of our questions. They've slowed down. We've had a couple of repeats, and I encourage folks, again, to visit that page on our website, and if more questions come in later, we'll comment and answer them, but we'll also be putting questions and answers on our website as they continue to come in, because this is an ongoing conversation, so thanks for being a part of it.
Jen, do you have any conclusion?
No, I did want to just really fast, there was a conversation around why don't we go hybrid that we forgot to address through some other feedback forms. And just really quick, we are an in-building district through ODE, and that is why we have the charter schools, so that there is a hybrid option, but that is not something we can look at to solve this problem at this point in time.
And ODE stands for the?
Oregon Department of Education.
Yep, very good. So we're required to be an in-person brick and mortar model is what it's technically called. Hey, I just want to say sincerely, thank you so much to all of the people who participated in this. This is not an easy decision, but it's a decision that I want to do together as a community. I hope that you appreciate that we're here with you tonight, spending an hour and a half working through the questions, communicating the logistics, talking about how we got to this process, which involved a ton of collaboration and community voice. I also just want to clearly state that it is 100% okay for you to not like this idea. It's 100% okay for you after this event tonight to formulate your own opinion that is either supportive of it, okay with it, or opposed to it. The whole point of this meeting tonight was to inform you so that you can formulate a true and accurate opinion. Nothing drives me more crazy than people going on to social media, throwing false narratives out there, putting bad details out there, and people formulating their own opinion from bad stuff. And bad, I just mean inaccurate, or doesn't fully communicate, the school district's perspective inside of that process. So just you being here tonight to listen goes a long way in terms of your ability to be able to formulate a good opinion after hearing the school district's side of the story. I greatly appreciate that, and I strongly respect that. We're going to continue to do more community outreach so that we can continue to collect voice. Our school board members are going to be very public and present out there in the community. If you see a school board member or you want to write a school board member, you are more than welcome to do that, to share your opinion. They represent you. And I just want to say, we have 7 great school board members, extremely qualified people who love this community deeply. Some are multi-generational, some have moved here, some are very successful business owners. We've got a great school board, and this is a decision that they are taking extremely seriously. So please participate in this process. That's all we want. We want our school district to reflect you. We're not a school district like others maybe in the metro area who just determine the course for you. We're literally putting the power in your hands to make this decision, and then we will do a great job of executing it. But this school district, it's 2025, and you have a local school district that still belongs to you. Be proud of that. Be happy of that, but that also means that the tough decisions is something that the community has to grapple with and ultimately own. And it's such a pleasure to be a part of that process. Have a great night and a great week. Enjoy that great weather. And it is truly such a great time to be a part of the Estacada School District. Thanks for being such a deep part of it and being all in live on Facebook with us tonight. Have a great night. Thank you.